Welcome to Business Launch Journal, where we delve into intricate world of global affairs, economics, and politics. In a world of shifting geopolitics and rumors of war dominate everyday conversations, Sweden, a nation famous for its neutrality, is about to face its new challenges. Joining us today, the Ambassador of Sweden for Indonesia, His Excellency Daniel Blockert. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Ambassador, it comes to our attention that Sweden has officially joined NATO in the 7th of March 2024. How does Sweden balance its traditional policy of neutrality with the potential implications of joining NATO in today's geopolitical landscape?
Well, the short answer to that question is that we don't balance it at all. It is a huge change for us. It's a profound and immediate change of what has been almost 200 years of Swedish foreign policy. We are not a neutral country anymore. We cannot claim to be neutral anymore, which is, like I said, a huge change for us. And it also says something about the context and the timing of it. This, to be very frank with you, this would never have happened without the Russian attack against Ukraine. We have war in Europe again. One of the countries involved is a nuclear power. Russia has also been very clear in comments against certain of their neighbors that they have more or less veiled threats, perhaps mainly to the Baltic countries. So there was a decision in Sweden that we have to review our security and foreign policy. And getting under the NATO umbrella was something that was decided. Big, across-the-board consensus among Swedish parties. So it's a huge change that was quite quick, but has support from the Swedish population that now it was time to join NATO.
What strategic advantages or challenges would Sweden encounter by becoming a member of NATO, particularly in its relationship with Baltic nations or Eastern European?
Well, if you look at the Baltic Sea now, all the countries around the Baltic Sea are members of NATO except for one, which is Russia. I think that when we joined NATO, and Finland did it, of course, a little bit before us, we have raised the threshold of conflict. We already collaborate a lot with the other Nordic countries, with the Baltic countries, but we can have a deeper cooperation now. And of course, we will have support from a wider organization in itself, in NATO. It always puts demands on us as well. We are spending quite a lot of money on upgrading our defense, not only in terms of sort of having the equipment, but also to be part of an organization like NATO requires that you share intelligence, you have a lot of information, that you have weapon systems that are compatible, that you practice together and train together. So we are spending quite a lot of resources on this. And I think that the support from almost all countries in the region have been very strong, and we have been very much welcomed into the NATO umbrella together with Finland. So it's a challenge. It will be an interesting process to follow, but we are confident that we made the right decision.
If you don't mind me adding a question, is there any change in military policy when it comes to the new reality where war dominates everyday's conversation right now? Like, for example, France, they used to have a standing army, but then they downgraded to a certain level of readiness because they want to be more of like a force that could be deployed anywhere in the world against terrorism. And also I noticed that there is jet fighters in Sweden called the Gripen. It was made for specific purposes, like for a quick and then deployment and then to return again. Is there any foreseeable changes to military doctrine and policies because of these recent events in Eastern Europe?
Absolutely. I mean, there is a discussion, and I think that that's not unique for Sweden, but it's a discussion that we have in Europe in general. I mean, I've spent quite a lot of my career working with EU issues, and this isn't a discussion that's been going on. Have we been naive in Europe? Because we had for a long time a sense that war was something in the past. We haven't been in war in Sweden for more than 200 years. So I think that for many people, that was something that didn't happen in Europe anymore. I don't know if it's true to say that we have been naive, because I think it was logical not to spend a lot of money on defense, for instance,
in the 90s and the noughties. But now certainly there is a shift. For us, defense will never be something that could be designed as an attack feature or something that we would use to threaten other states. It's a defense issue for us, really. But we are looking into how we can, of course, match our defense systems more with our neighboring countries and the other NATO countries as well. And also, like you said, when you are a member of NATO, there will be requirements that we are able to participate not only in the region around us, but also perhaps in other areas as well. Sweden has always been contributor to UN forces, so we are used to having military personnel and also military material in all parts of the world. But now we have to be more strategic in that thinking. And that leads to looking at weapon systems, looking at the material we have, looking at how we use it. So it's a change, absolutely. It's a big change for us.
But will there be any significant change to the social policies? Because there's a shift going on in military, and I would assume that there would be a budget shift. Would there be any implication to the social services?
I mean, not really, not in that sense. Of course, money is not something that grows on trees, not even in Sweden. So there will be priorities, and there are things that we might have prioritized differently than we do it now. But it's not something that will have that kind of profound effect. And I think it's also important when you talk about the tradition that we have in Sweden and also in the other Nordic countries that we are not becoming a hawkish country on military issues or war because we joined NATO. NATO has now received 2 new members, Sweden and Finland, who will both of us always have peace as the first option. War is really the last resort. We are still going to be fighting in the international arena for disarmament, for arms regulations, for international law, non-proliferation, getting conflict resolution systems in place, mediation, arbitration. That is always going to be our priorities, and that is not going to change just because we could become a member of NATO. So we are part of a bigger defense system, but it's interesting and I think important to note that that doesn't change our general approach. It gives us a little bit of a bigger context, but in general, the idea of working for peace as our main target will always be there. And I think that if you look at the Nordic countries, both, for instance, Norway and Denmark, who have been in NATO much longer than we have been, they have managed to balance that quite well, because nobody would regard Norway and Denmark as sort of aggressors in any type of conflict. It's still very much driven by a Nordic view on the rule of law and how we are going to deal with international relations. And that's not going to change for Sweden and Swedish society in any near future that I could envisage.